Okay, so today we're going to be going over what we need to do to frame out our walls. If you remember yesterday we framed out our floors. Today we're going to be working on our walls. But first off, we want to just review what some of the component parts for our floor frames are. So if we look on our floor frames, we've got our joist headers. We've got our joists. And then we also have basically our decking material. That is usually either 1/2 inch plywood or 3/4 inch plywood. It might be 3/4 inch OSB board that we would use for the decking on the floor. So today we're actually going to be talking about all of the component parts that make up a wall and a wall frame. So in our wall frame, typically the wood that we're using, this is going to be all 2x4 construction. So I'm going to kind of draw this out and explain the parts up here on the board. So bear with me here as I'll just draw my rectangular board. Now for the place and for the fall play, the set that we're building, the wall sections are going to be 8 foot by 8 foot wall sections. So we'll have 8 feet down here in our horizontal distance, and of course 8 feet will be up here in our vertical distance. So, and we're going to need to be aware of that as we cut all of these 2x4s. So we'll start out as we go. We've got 2 main component parts here to the frame. These are very important structurally. We've got what is called the bottom plate or the sole plate, and I'm going to write these over here. So we got our bottom plate. Sometimes you also hear this called the sole plate. And then we've got our top plate up as well. That's the bottom plate and the top plate. And then we've got these 2x4s for the frame that go in through here. And these are called our studs. So, now, the frame that we're going to be building has 2 doors in it. That's what the set design calls for, so we need to frame it out for 2 doors. There's a 30-inch door and a 24-inch door that both go into it. So we're going to need some other studs to help, and I'll talk about sizing and dimensioning on there. So I'm going to, just real quick, we're going to have another stud here, and then we're going to have another stud over here. This is for the 1 door section. We're going to have a stud over here and another stud over here. Now it's important to note, we're going to put right here our 30-inch door, and here is going to be our 24-inch door. But we don't space this at 30 inches between there. We've got to allow some more space for other component parts. So we also have another 2x4 that's going to go right here, and a 2x4 that's going to be right there. Those are called, if you look at your worksheet, you'll see the names of all of these here, and those particular doors are called a trimmer stud. So let's write this down here too. A trimmer stud is what those are called. Now, I forgot earlier, but we're going to write some sizes on here. Our bottom sole plate, again, this is dimensional lumber, so that is going to be our real size and real life size is going to be a 2x4 by 8 foot board. So we've got 2 inch by 4 inch by 8 foot on our bottom sole plate, and we're going to be using a 2x4 by 8 foot on our top plate as well. Now as we look at these studs, you'll notice we're not going to cut those at 8 foot. We're actually going to have to take into allowance the fact that we've got the top and the bottom plate here that are going into the 8 foot. So if you remember, our actual size of a 2x4 is 1.5 by 3.5. So we're going to have to take 1.5 inches here and 1.5 inches here, which add up to 3, and subtract 3 inches from the 8 foot. That'll give us 93 inches is the distance or the length that we are going to cut those studs. So our studs are going to be cut 2 inches or 2x4 by 93 inches. Now, we're talking about our trimmer studs. We've got to know something about our door size here to determine the length of our trimmer size. And remember, I said a 30-inch and a 24-inch door. Now that's the width of the door. So in most cases, the length of that door is going to be 80 inches. So we're going to have a 30-inch by 80-inch and a 24 by 80-inch door that's going to go in here. Now this 30 inches is the distance between the trimmer stud and the other trimmer stud. And we're going to have the same over here as we go here. This is going to be a 24-inch door opening, and as we go across from here, we're going to have 80 inches going in the vertical for our door. So that will be 80 inches there. So our trimmer studs are going to be a 2-inch by 4-inch by 80-inch to cut those. And we're going to need 4 of those, 2 for each door opening. Now at the top of each door opening, we will also have our headers. Now there's 2 different types of headers that we can do. Load bearing header or a non-load bearing header. Now in this case, we're just going to do non-load bearing headers because we don't need a whole lot of support on that. But we do need to be aware of the actual length. Now again, we're taking the actual size of our 2x4s. Now if our opening is 30 inches, we have to add 1.5 inches for the thickness of this 2x4 and 1.5 inches for the thickness of that 2x4. So this header is going to be 33 inches long. Oh, and this header over here then will be 24 plus 1.5 plus 1.5, which gives us 27 inches long. So we're going to need 2 headers. One will be a 2x4 by 33 inches, and one will be a 2x4 by 27 inches. Now we're not quite done just yet. In addition to those headers, we also will attach what's called a cripple stud. And we're going to put those cripple studs right here in the middle, right like this, so that you have that in the exact middle to give support there. Now, again, in order to know what size that is, we've got to add and subtract all of our numbers in the vertical. So we're at 93 inches for our stud. So we're going to subtract the 80 inches for the height of our door. That's going to leave us with 13 inches. Now, we also have to take into account the thickness here of our header, which is 1.5 inches, which means that our cripple studs we're going to need to cut at 11.5 inches long. So here we've got what we call the cripple stud, or just called a cripple. That's going to be 2x4 by 11.5 inches long. Now, you'll notice this, of course, is not drawn to scale. We need to take into account some horizontal distances, and we're going to have to be aware of where we're going to lay out each one of these studs. Now, if I am 30 inches on my door opening, I need to be aware of the total distance here for that door frame. And again, I've got a 1.5 inch stud here and a 1.5 inch stud here. So that's going to be 3 inches on that side. 1.5 inch here and 1.5 inch here is going to be 3 inches on that side. So 30, 33, 36 total inches. Now remember, we're 8 feet across. So if we take 96 inches and I'm going to subtract the 36 inches over here for the wood that I'm going to put in this door frame. Over here I got a 24 inch opening, but I also have to allow 3 inches on this side for these two studs and 3 inches on that side for those two studs. So I'm also going to subtract 30 inches. That's taking into account the space needed for both of those door frames. If we do that subtraction, we're left with 30 inches overall in between here that's left over. So we've got a 30-inch space, that's this space right here. And if you noticed as I drew it, we got some space on this side and some space on that side. So first off, we're going to kind of assume that we're going to keep everything as far as our distance on centers. And if you recall, the distance between studs in a wall frame between centers is typically 16 inches. So if I go 30 inches minus 16 inches, I'm going to make the assumption, again, this is not drawn to scale, but I'm making the assumption that the spacing between these two studs is 16 inches on center. That's going to leave me with 14 inches left over. If I kind of center this up, that's going to leave a 7-inch space here on this side for that stud placement and 7 inches here on this side stud for that placement. To take our total 96 inches overall, that's going to give us our wall frame. And if you turn right around here, you'll look, we've got our little scale model built, showing all the component parts. Again, we've got our bottom plate, we got our top plate, we got our studs. You're going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 studs. Then we've got these studs in here that are cut to 80 inches. Now again, this is a 1/6 scale, so you've got to take your scale factor into it. You've got your 2 headers, non-load bearing, and in this case, we've got our cripples there as well. And that's all of the components for the wall section. So go ahead and do your calculations to scale it down so you can make your scale model. And then of course, once we've made the scale model, we'll be building this in real life too. So that's all I've got for you today. Go ahead and get this taken care of, and we'll see you tomorrow.